Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to do my first ever post-rotation deck profile. Now it's for Gouging Fire EX, potentially a very new fun way to play Entei Iron Valiant with none other than the Paradox version of Entei itself. So in today's video, I'm going to break down where my list is right now, the strengths, the weaknesses, kind of like its theories about where I think its matchups kind of work with, and potentially how it will shape up to in the post-rotation metagame. So in theory, I think right now its strength is a huge Beat Stick EX deck. Doing 260 damage is very easy for 3 energies. An easy way to get powered up with like of Attachment, Sada, and Magma Basement. Obviously, its downside is you can't use this attack until it leaves the active spot, but if it's an Iron Valiant sort of archetype, you're playing a ton of switching cards as well, so you could potentially get into these very high of damage outputs as well. Iron Valiant really helps clean up any of the attacks as well, that Tachyon Bits ability, and can be, like I said, powered up very quick and early. Some of the weaknesses definitely can struggle to keep up with the tempo. You need to constantly be hitting all of these sort of explosive energies around as well. You are playing a ton of switching cards as well, but you always need that switch. You need to switch out that Gouging Fire to get into your Iron Valiants to then kind of power up your Exploding Fire again so you can get these big one-hit KOs and can sometimes really struggle with these big single prize decks. Pretty much one thing I've always noticed with these two pricing sort of archetypes as well, they can really struggle if they just fed single price after single price after single price. Iron Valiant, yes, does help with that sort of matchup as well, but kind of like constantly going 260 damage and having that limitation to it kind of becomes very weak. So this is my list right now for Gouging Fire EX, because I think you kind of need that one. If we look at the likes of how where Miraidon really was a start, and definitely Roy Moon, having that maxing out of your main sort of attacking option is just super powerful. Iron Valiant as well being that 4-off as well. In theory, if you play all 4 Tachyon bits and attack with Gouging Fire, you'll do an additional 80 damage as well with that. That's 340 damage. That's KOing pretty much everything. So it does work out very well. And a support Pokemon, you have 1 Squawkabilly, 1 Lumineon, and 1 Greninja. All of these really help that setup as well. Squawkabilly obviously helps, especially in the early game, discard your hand, draw into your 6. Greninja to discard any basic energies you have into your deck and discard pile, and draw 2 prizes, and Lumineon to get any of the supporter cards you might potentially need. The reason why I think all of these won't really work, because they have so much good synergy with Sada as well as Magma Basin as well. The A-Spec of choice, we are going back to A-Spec, so we can have 2 one-of sort of factors, and that is Prime Catcher. It's a switch and a Gusting effect in one. This works very well in this style of deck as well. Having that Guzma effect as an item card is super powerful. You can use Sada followed by Prime Catcher so you can get any of your Pokemon powered up very quickly. The rest of the item cards, we have 2 Earthen Vessel, 2 Pokegear, 2 Techno Radar, 3 Ultra Ball, 4 Nest Ball, and then 4 Switch cards and 4 Switch. All of these have their big merits as well. Earthen Vessel works really well for discarding energy and gaining energies you might potentially need to get a discard, or really works well for the attachments for turn. Pokegear, because we aren't running that many ways to get your supporter cards. There's no Pokestop, nothing like that. So Pokegear really helps you get that started turn 1 if you're going second. Techno Radar gets that discarding effect, but also search your deck for that Iron Valiant. It's a really good in the late game and early game. Try and get in that pressure of that Tachyon bits. 3 Ultra Ball, 4 Nest Ball, I think it's kind of becoming like the key sort of factor from. We're saying goodbye to Battle VIP Pass, so kind of like going back to these more higher counts of Ultra Ball and Nest Ball might potentially be about where some decks are kind of working, and the switching, need I say less, you need it for Gouging Fire, you need it for Iron Valiant, it just works really well. And then supporter lineup, we have 1 Boss's Orders, 2 Iono, and 4 Professor Sada's Fatality. Professor Sada's Fatality is kind of like the meat and potatoes of this archetype. Kind of getting an attachment to 2 of your ancient Pokemon and drawing 3 is just super powerful, super strong, kind of like making sure your Gouging Fires are constantly always charging and ready for action. The Iono for that disruptor capability, and the Boss's Order as well. Only playing 2 Gusting effect being Prime Catcher and Boss's Orders, it may seem it's a little bit low, but having Tachyon bits with Iron Valiant and having the TM Devolution work really well to have that clean up any of your matches, any of the Pokemon on your opponent's active side. As I mentioned before, the rest of the tool cards are in fact 1 TM Devo, a Future Booster Capture Energy, and an Ancient Booster Capture Energy. The Future Booster Capture Energy, we're not doing 20 more damage with Iron Valiant, we're giving them free retreat, which will work really well. And the Ancient Booster Capture Energy really help you have that Gouging Fire have 290 HP. Super strong, very difficult to get KO'd. Potentially with Charizard, you need to have taken like 5 prize cards to 1-hit KO you. So that's why I also like that as well. And the TM Devo is just super strong. For Magma Basement, because that is another really strong factor of this deck. You want to be super explosive, so Magma Basement will really help in that sort of matchup wise, as well as 10 copies of Fire Energies. You might go, Charlie, that's pretty high, but You think about it, you could go down to 9 potentially, or in fact 10 is just such a good number in general, because you can get 3 powered up Gouging Fire EXs, and also just having a couple spare as well, so you don't always need to rely on them constantly fueling your attacking option. So that's my list right now. I think it's very strong and has a really good potential to keep up with the metagame. Now, kind of like looking at some of its favourites or matchup well, I do think it works really well in a lot of these big beat stick archetypes, like the Roy Moon, Miraidon. I think it can work really, really well in them. They can instantly one-hit KO them, quite difficult potentially get the KO back, but I think it's one of those sort of archetypes which is, as long as you get the first KO and can constantly stream the pressure, you're very much favoured in a matchup. That's kind of why I think Roy Moon and Miraidon. Lugia as well, you might go, Charlie, I think Lugia could be a little bit more difficult, but in theory, they're playing a lot of single price Pokemon. You only need one Tachyon bits to kind of get the KO on Lugia. Lugia isn't as powerful right now, so I do think it kind of falls into that favourable. Gardevoir as well, you might go with the same thing as well, but having TM Devo as well, by spreading the damage around there, potentially could see that really good play. Similar thing with Giratina as well. They play a ton of single price Pokemon, which you can easily take advantage of with Tachyon bits, and Giratina as well, you can easily swoop into them. None of them are playing the likes of half speed because it's rotated, so I think that's where I think this deck can really shine. Some of the even decks, I do think are the likes of Charizard, Xianpao, Snorlax, as well as also Sableye. Snorlax you could probably easily argue as a blocks archetype. We don't know how Snorlax is really going to affect, but having that Clippers, having the ability, Sporter, which lets you discard 2 item cards, definitely still has a really good control factor into this sort of archetype. Xianpao and Charizard, like I mentioned before, they are another really big beat stick archetypes as well. Xianpao you can kind of go around with, get a timely TM Devo to get rid of their Excaliburs. Charizard's a similar thing as well. They can't really one-hit kill you until you've taken at least 2 to 3 prize cards, so that's one really good thing going for you. Same thing like as Lost Box as well. Lost Box, especially with the likes of Roy Moon, Radiant Charizard, and other really strong attacking options, could be really difficult for you to constantly be streaming with if they can constantly get these big one-hit KOs and spread the damage around as well. Definitely something to be considered about. And some of the unfavorable decks, I do think, are some of the other new decks. I think the likes of Raging Bolt and the Future Box could also be very, very difficult for this deck to kind of deal with. Future can definitely rank up these big one-hit KOs with single price Pokemon, which can be very difficult for a 2-price Pokemon to kind of like constantly respond if they can initiate the price rate and make it a bit uneven for them. And similar thing with Raging Bolt. I think this deck does have legs. I think we have to see about where we think it's going to kind of like fit in the metagame right now. I think it could be an easy tier 2, maybe even tier 1.5 sort of archetype. But I do think it can be a little bit unfavored. Having 300 HP is pretty high. Like I mentioned before, it can go around that one very easily with switching notes as well, but it does have other single price Pokemon which can get these big one-hit KOs. So kind of like looking ahead at this archetype, could this be the next big basic attacking deck? We saw that the likes of Entei Iron Valiant doing very, very well, but kind of like fell off a little bit. Could this deck really kind of like overthrow this one? I think Iron Valiant is the right partner for this deck. I think having that sort of matchup wide, getting that extra sort of damage and getting that spreading effect is really, really powerful. I think that's exactly what this deck needs, but doesn't need too much to get set up. That's definitely something to really be considerate about as well, because if we look at the archetype right now, we can see there is a lot of things on paper that saying this deck is easily going to work. It plays a ton of item cost, but not a ton of draw factor outside of Sada, Squawkabilly, and Greninja. So that's definitely something to be considerate about, especially going into this sort of new format as well. Could this deck take just a little bit too much to set up, or is this exactly what this type of deck needs in this right format? So hope you guys enjoy this little short break down what my first ever post-rotation deck. Let me know in the comments down below, do you think that Gouging Fire Iron Valiant could actually have some legs to be a very, very strong archetype in the post-rotation metagame? If you do, please make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below your thoughts. See you guys later for another video. Bye for now.